Hey, everybody. Sorry for being late. Just please bear with us while we confirm that we are up and running on X and YouTube.
Yep, we're both live.
Okay, let me just want to pin our live stream on Twitter. So we're good to go on YouTube, Rami?
Yep.
I guess that was you.
Yeah.
So good day, everyone. And to those of us who are joining us from across the pond in a later time zone, good evening. And we may even have people who are joining us from further afield where it's the early hours of the morning. Wherever you may be, we wish you a prosperous and peaceful holiday and 2026. And we thank you for taking the time out of your precious schedules to join us today. Hello from Vas Adams, Yasu, Apo Toronto. Comrade, good to see you. Sachs Global and Heyman Harrison. Those aren't people joining us today, but apparently those are the handles of some AI-generated YouTube channels for Jeffrey Sachs and former Ambassador Bruce Heyman, which is an interesting piece of information. Bobby Sands, welcome. Trying to scroll up here, but maybe you can see other names.
Bobby Sands, a great comrade.
A friend of the show, spiritually speaking. We're going to talk to you today about what we regard as the top 10 fake news stories of 2025. You know, the convention. Hi, Tassos. Great to see you again. Remember the Earth. Remember the coming. Hi, welcome. You know, the convention in the podcasting world and the news world is to go over the top news stories, but we thought what was even more remarkable is some of the level of absurdity to which the corporate media has descended in its desperate attempts to keep people inside what one might call the matrix. Because there are a lot of people waking up to the fact that under our extraordinarily effective and ubiquitous, relentless propaganda system here in the West, other parts of the world, of course, we have been very much living in a fabricated world, a constructed world, which bears little reality to the facts on the ground. Momo DV7XT, thank you very much for your kind remark. Welcome. And we're also joined by Mirba Hamanyar 6992 from Toronto. Great to have you. So, Rami, where are you today, brother?
I'm currently in Bogota, Colombia, but tomorrow I'll be attending the Feria de Cali, which one of our viewers suggested that I should attend. And after just reading a bit about this, I decided to spontaneously buy tickets. I'm flying there tomorrow. I think our viewer mentioned that it was the greatest festival they've ever attended. So I think, Dimitri, the moral of the story here is that we read the comments and we inspire ourselves from them to continue our reporting and investigation.
We do indeed. And we thank our audience members for their invaluable input, that we've gotten wonderful ideas and tips from many of them. And we strongly encourage others who have not reached out to us with suggestions about stories to cover, leads to follow, underreported information. Please, we encourage you to share that with us. You can do it, when we're having live streams. You can do it. You can go to my website, DimitriLascaris.org. You can message us on Substack on our Reason to Resist page. Any number of ways you can reach us, and we welcome the input. So, Rami, you were somewhere else just a few days ago. You were in Panama, and you did a great report from the Panama Canal on the anniversary of the brutal and criminal U.S. invasion of the country some, 40 years ago, was it? Tell us just briefly about what happened there.
So it was 36 years ago. The United States invaded Panama under the pretext of removing narco-trafficant Manuel Noriega. And when I flew to Panama, I didn't know much about this place. I knew about the Panama Papers. I was told that it was going to be this expensive place. I don't know, like this super developed oasis in Central America. And when I arrived there, it couldn't be anything further from the truth. Panama is one of the most unequal societies in the world, segregated by class, segregated by color of skin, segregated in multiple different ways. And I was able to meet comrades from a revolutionary youth movement. They gave me the greatest hospitality and told me their stories. And it was my obligation, truly my revolutionary obligation, to share their story to the rest of the world, because the struggle of Panama is a struggle of Venezuela today, and it's a struggle of Palestinians and everyone resisting American imperialism. I really recommend everyone to watch this report. It broke my heart seeing the descendants of these martyrs, people holding the pictures of their fathers that were killed by the Americans, essentially for control over Central America, to get first and free access to the Panama Canal. And it's just the similarities between Panama 1989 and Venezuela today. It's just history rewriting itself, and some of us falling for the same old tricks over and over again. So all eyes on Panama, so that we could learn from them, so that we do not let us fall into the same trap in Venezuela. And all my solidarity with the Venezuelan people and the Brotherhood of Gran Colombia. The people that I met in Panama City deeply empathize with their Venezuelan brothers, and they often told me that we are one big country, and that's the same way I feel in Greater Syria, right? In Syria, Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon. We are one people.
Now, Rami, you've emerged as quite an intrepid on-the-ground reporter for the alternative media, and we're so happy to have you doing this work. I've been doing it alone for many years, and having a compadre to help me cover this vast planet is really wonderful. So you did a report for us from Belgrade, as I recall. You were in the south of Lebanon with me. Partly there, we were there for the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah in February of this year, but we also went to the border with the genocidal entity and surveyed the vast devastation there. Panama, you're now in Colombia. Before I mention the most recent one, which we just published today, did I miss any locations?
There was Georgia and Romania. We broke the story on how the EU rigged the elections in Romania.
Right.
No one we spoke about this in alternative media or even mainstream media. This was like truly just swept under the rug, but we covered it. And our comrades in Romania were very, very grateful. And I think it's an obligation as well to share their stories.
So just to prove that Rami is literally scouring the earth looking for stories that should be told, you know, as we just mentioned, he was in West Asia, he was in Europe, now he's in Latin America. He also went to the People's Republic of China early this year. And for reasons I've never really appreciated, we waited months. I think it was not intentional. We just got really busy to publish Rami's fascinating report from the streets of Urumqi in the Xinjiang Autonomous Province. He spends an hour just walking around the streets of Urumqi, you know, in an area where Western governments allege that China is brutally oppressing a Muslim ethnic minority, the Uyghurs. Some governments going so far as to accuse China of genocide. We finally assembled that report, finalized it, published today. It's still very, very timely, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you. You really have to watch it. It's fascinating because, as Rami says in the report, he's not being guided by anyone. This is not a curated trip. Nobody put restrictions on where he could go, what he could see, the people he could talk to. He just starts roaming around this city. And you can see what he sees, and he does manage to interact with some people, although it's very difficult because of the language barrier. And just ask yourself, as you're watching this report, does this look to you like the site of a genocide? Now, I want to qualify one thing before I ask you to comment, Rami, because I don't want people to misinterpret our editorial perspective on this. And Rami, if you disagree, please, by all means, chime in. But I think you're probably on the same page with me here. We don't claim to have a definitive answer about what is happening to the Uyghurs in Xinjiang because we have not done the breadth of investigation on the ground that would really need to be done in order for that question to be determined with a high degree of confidence. So we're not giving anybody a stamp of approval, you know, or anything like that. What we're just telling you is this is what Rami saw, and we can say that what Rami saw, which is limited because he was only in the streets of Urumqi, he wasn't traveling across the whole of Xinjiang, doesn't look to us like there is a lot of oppression going on there, but you can judge for yourself and keep an open mind. I will say also, Rami, before you talk a little bit about your report, I myself, before Rami went to Xinjiang, I spent a lot of time. I spent an entire week of my life, literally an entire week, 7 days, poring over testimony and other documents that the Canadian Parliamentary Committee on International Human Rights assembled in the course of an inquiry, a sort of inquiry it conducted in the Canadian Parliament about the allegations of genocide against China. And actually, the Canadian Parliament adopted a non-binding resolution accusing China of committing genocide. Although the government under Justin Trudeau did not formally take that position, the vast majority of Canadian parliamentarians did vote in favor of a non-binding resolution saying that China was committing genocide. So I looked at this material very carefully. I even called up myself some of the witnesses who appeared before the parliamentary committee and questioned them. And I also called up the somebody in the know who was very carefully, very closely involved in the parliamentary hearings. And I asked this person knows the answer to the question, did you invite a representative of the Chinese government to address Parliament? And they said no. And they had no explanation for why that hadn't been done. And anyway, in any case, for what it's worth, and we'll get into this, Matt, perhaps another time, what I came away with as a lawyer reading that testimony was that the claim is very shaky, to put it mildly. That's not to say, again, I'm not in a position to definitively deny that there are human rights abuses taking place. I don't pretend to know that, but I can tell you that based on what I gleaned from that, my review of all of that testimony took me 7 days, questioning people, looking at alternative sources to try to understand what's happening in Xinjiang, and Rami's report. I got serious doubts about what's Western government narrative about the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghurs. But Rami, take it away. What can you tell us about your report?
First of all, I was supposed to just stay there for a week. I ended up staying there for like 3 weeks. Before going to Xinjiang, I spent around another month in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, just to understand. I mean, look, it's a different part of the world. It's a different way of governing. And I had to acclimate myself to Chinese governance, right? It's the way it's being managed as a country. It's a country of 1.3 billion people. It's led by a communist party. And then when I went to Xinjiang, the culture shock was not as big because it truly feels like it's the same communist party that is ruling over Xinjiang. Now, I've heard multiple claims over the past few years that there's a genocide happening in Xinjiang against the Uyghur people. I went there just filming. No one ever told me to stop filming anything. I was never told not to go somewhere. There's just like these specific, let's just say, military bases in these military Ministry of Defense, let's say, headquarters that I saw in Guangzhou and other parts of China. Clearly, you're not allowed to film there, but that's the case anywhere around the world. If you're going to come up with a claim that there's a genocide happening, the burden of proof is on you. It's how it is. I mean, as Palestinians, we're spending, since the day I was born, I've been spending every minute of my day, right? Every single breath I have, spending it supporting the plight of my people and documenting this genocide. And I feel like there's the proof and evidence is in front of you. When the genocide happened, when earlier in university, when I was talking about Xinjiang, people were telling us the Palestinians are lucky because you can film your oppression. Us in China, we cannot. I walked freely with a camera.
You also went into a mosque, maybe more than one.
Mosque, of course. They were telling me that you cannot speak the Uyghur language, you cannot pray, there's no mosques. There could be other claims of oppression against the Uyghur people, but these specific claims that people gave me, I did not see it occur, truly. And it truly makes it difficult for me to understand their rationale and to take any other claims seriously. So the burden of proof is on them. Why did I go to Xinjiang? Well, because there's a genocide happening over there. If there's a genocide happening anywhere in the world, I have an obligation to go there and document it. Dimitri, how many times did we try to go to Gaza? We tried every single avenue to cross the border into Gaza. We tried to create some humanitarian foundations to get these press passes to enter the country, to enter Gaza. Nothing worked. So you're telling me that if there's one in Xinjiang and I'm not allowed to go, if there's one in Xinjiang, I'll go there and document it. There's a reason why we're not allowed, and international media is not allowed to enter Gaza, and it's because there's a genocide. And there's a reason why international media can enter Xinjiang, it's because there's nothing to hide. The Canadian government was quick to recognize the genocide in Xinjiang with very little to no evidence, yet the genocide in Gaza that is heavily documented, even today, under the so-called ceasefire, there's better evidence of a genocide happening than whatever's going on in Xinjiang. And then I must say that in the first instance of the war, in October 7, 2023, I posted on my personal Instagram a story of the Chinese government supporting Palestinian right to resistance, saying that Israel was responsible for the escalation happening in Gaza. And I had 3 or 4, one person from who self-describes herself as a Uyghur, roast me into my DMs, telling me that you don't want the support from China. So that makes us believe, why are these claims of Muslim genocide in Xinjiang so prevalent? Is it because the West is trying to create a gap and to divide any form of support that we can ever get from China, so that we could reject them, so that when we're under our own genocide, we tell China, don't come support us. Let us face it on our own against the most brutal Western alliance of murderers. So I will not fall for that trick. My brothers in the global South, we are brothers in the same struggle. The Chinese, the Russians, the Mexicans, the Cubans, the Panamanians, the Iranians, we're all under the threat of a common enemy, and no one's going to create any division on behalf of the West among us. So and one last comment that I want to say is that any evidence I will ever bring of my footage, people are going to find flaws. First of all, one of the comments on the video, someone said that I didn't interview Uyghurs. The next report I'm going to publish will have some. If we bring evidence, they'll tell us our evidence is. If we don't film something, they'll tell us we're intentionally leaving information out. If we bring the information forward, people will find holes. So I really think that at this point, if we're going to watch our footage, you need to understand we're coming from a place of good faith. I do not work for the Chinese government. I'm someone who's facing the largest genocide in the world. We're already doxxed. We're already facing the greatest enemy in the world. I do not mind facing China if they're doing something wrong, but I'm not going to create evidence or invent things that I didn't see just to please people into making me believe that there's a genocide happening in Xinjiang.
Yeah, for what it's worth, by the way, folks, I had planned to go to China and Xinjiang, amongst other parts of China, in October, and I decided instead to go to try to get into the occupied West Bank. The Israelis barred me from going in, but as a result, I didn't go to China. And in the lead up to my trip, I actually had made travel arrangements and everything when I changed my mind at the last second. In the lead up to the trip, I communicated with somebody at the embassy of the People's Republic of China in Ottawa that I've had, communications with over the years, just friendly communications and so forth. And I asked him, I want to go to Xinjiang. Is there a problem with that? He goes, no. He says, you go there, go wherever you want. I mean, there's no restriction on that. You don't need to have anybody accompany you. You don't need any kind of special visa. So enjoy yourself. So I'm glad that Rami was able to go, although I was not this particular time around. Now, let's, before we get into the top 10 fake news stories of 2025, I just want to share with our audience something that was again brought to our attention by friends of the show, audience members out on the West Coast of the United States. Siri and Brad, thank you very much for sharing this with us. Some of you may have seen that a couple of live streams ago, we talked about these pro-Israel ads that are being aired during our episodes on YouTube in the United States. And we showed a video of one of those ads, and it was attached, or it aired during a report that we had done on the so-called ceasefire in Gaza. So the report in question related to Palestine and Israel. So our friends Siri and Brad sent us the same video, but this time they aired it while Rami was doing his report from Panama. So it's not just the Israel reports, that the Israel or Palestine related reports that this ad is appearing on. It's basically it seems, all of our content. So I'm just going to show you this ad briefly, and notice the name of the organization at the end.
And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom.
Okay, just stop there for a second. Freedom, not terror. Oh, wait, I just want to show the end of this, Rami.
Oh, 1 second. I need to put it back then. Hey.
There it is. There it is. So there's Rami talking from the streets of Panama, and they're airing this pro-Israel ad. So we did a little digging into this campaign, Freedom, Not Terror, and we found an interesting article on the Substack of an outlet called Eurovision News. And they say Freedom, Not Terror is part of Israel's digital war against Hamas and running on old footage and US dollars. The Israeli government, I'm reading here from the report, October 24th, 2025. This is shortly after the so-called ceasefire came into effect. The Israeli government has begun a new advertising campaign from newly created non-governmental social media accounts accusing Hamas of choosing terror amid the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Titled Freedom, Not Terror, the new campaign is targeting viewers in the U.S. and promotes various talking points, including the recent executions by Hamas. And while some of the videos are being hosted on newly created social media accounts that are not immediately identified as government-affiliated, paid ads using this content are being run by the dastardly Israeli government advertising agency LAPAM on Google platforms. So the Israeli government is targeting our program with anti-Palestinian ads, obviously trying to make the Palestinians look like people who deserve the monstrosities that Israel has been inflicting upon them. Before we go on to the top 10 fake news stories, any thoughts about that, Rami?
I mean, it's a lost cause. First of all, they're describing themselves to be fighting against Hamas digitally, basically insinuating that everyone who's advocating for Palestine online is part of Hamas. I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but it's a lost cause for them. I mean, the images don't lie. No matter which amount of money they're going to spend with this propaganda. I mean, you see it on the comments as well, right? Like my most Lambda friends who don't really engage in politics all see Israel in such a bad light. I don't know. It will take a lot more than that to ever clean their image, if anything at all. So
probably the best way to clean their image is to dismantle Israel altogether and give it back to the Palestinians. And anybody, any Jewish Israeli who wants to remain and live in a state with Palestinians as equals, my own belief is that most Palestinians would welcome that if they were genuinely determined to treat Palestinians as equals. But we're nowhere near that reality at this point. So let's begin with the top 10 news stories, fake news stories of 2025. And Rami and I, the way we're going to work this is I chose 5, Rami chose 5. We compared a list to make sure there was an overlap. And then we're going to go back and forth until we go through the 10. We're not going here in any particular order. So we really want to kind of leave it up to you at the end of this to decide which of these stories is the biggest fake news story of the year. And maybe between now and the time we finish going through those stories, we'll figure out how to conduct a poll on this thing. But anybody have any suggestions for how we can do that? Sorry for being so primitive, but we haven't yet figured out how to conduct a poll in our live stream. This will be the first time we do it if we can pull it off. So top 10 fake news story number 1. The claim that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had no co-conspirators. So let's, I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you why this is fake. So in July, after Trump officials like Pam Bondi said there was a file on Epstein's clients sitting on her desk, the Department of Justice and the FBI suddenly put out a statement saying that they would disclose no further Epstein files because there was no basis to charge anyone other than Epstein and Maxwell. And they said they wanted to protect the victims. And so they put out this unsigned memo. You see here the DOJ and the Federal Bureau of Investigation in July of this year. I've highlighted the more pertinent parts. They said they had, more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. And then they go on about the thoroughness with which it was reviewed. The files relating to Epstein, they said, include a large volume of images of Epstein, images and videos of victims who are either minors or appear to be minors, and over 10,000 downloaded videos and images of illegal child sex abuse material and other pornography. Notice they don't say anything there about wealthy men who are friends of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, right? They just say images of Epstein and his victims. And then they say teams of agents, analysts, attorneys, and privacy and civil liberties experts comb through the digital and documentary evidence with the aim of providing as much information as possible to the public while simultaneously protecting the victims. And then down in the third paragraph, the systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. And here's the most important part. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. That's the key statement. And at the bottom, it says, it is the determination of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. So remember that the FBI acknowledges and has acknowledged for some time that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell victimized around 1,200 females. Now, that's what they acknowledge. The number, who knows, could be substantially higher. Are we seriously to believe that the only people who abused those 1,200 females were Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? Now, the claim that there are no other co-conspirators took a massive hit 2 months later in September of this year when Republican Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky grilled FBI Director, that fool, Kash Patel, about co-conspirators. And here's part of that exchange. This was in a congressional hearing.
I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey
The CEO of Barclays Bank, people.
Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada.
A billionaire from Canada. Who might that be? By the way, there probably will be some speculation that it's the disgraced fashion mogul sexual predator Peter Nygard. Now, he was reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know, though, if he ever reached the level of a billionaire status. So I'm not sure that this is actually a reference to Peter Nygard.
Dimitri, could it be the billionaire that we discovered is behind AWZ Ventures that is supporting pretty much all these Israeli cybersecurity and monitoring companies?
Hey, anything's possible, Rami. I don't want to get sued for defamation, though, so we'll just park that one for that time. Let's hear it. Let's hear what else. I want to hear Kash Patel's response to this explosive information.
We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So
Yeah, 3 successive administrations said the victims were not credible. All of those administrations had a powerful incentive to bury the allegations because they almost certainly involve people who are closely connected to either the Democratic or the Republican Party, and people who have a lot of power and influence in the West. So, Kash Patel, who hasn't actually seen the statements, no one should take any comfort whatsoever in his claim that these witnesses were not credible. Who would trust the Trump regime, led by such a man as Donald Trump, to decide whether women alleging sexual abuse by powerful men are credible? You're going to take Donald Trump's word for it, or anybody who appoints to this task? Woo. So let me just close the loop on this one by showing you a couple of emails that just emerged in the latest document dump, which really blew a big hole in the claim that there were no co-conspirators. This is an email that the FBI has released from July 2019. And you can see in here, someone from FBI New York is asking somebody else in the FBI on July 7, 2019, when you get a chance, can you give me an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators? Do we need blank, blank, blank to head out on blank, blank? And then there's another one that came out, another email. This is May 6, 2020. So this is the following year. Okay. Now, presumably between July 2019 and May 2020, they did a lot of investigation, right? That gave them, 10 months. And this email, which appears to have come from an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. And by the way, this is important because one of the arguments that, the Trump regime has used is to say there was a deal involving Florida prosecutors way back in the early 2000s that gave immunity to a bunch of people, who might have been co-conspirators. And so that can't be pursued. But that agreement doesn't bind authorities outside of Florida. So, for example, it doesn't bind federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. So this person says, memo on co-conspirators we could potentially charge the Monday after Epstein's death. Then they ask for a co-conspirator update memo, 86 pages, a corporate prosecution memo, 13 pages, never discussed. A prosecution memo, April, 26 pages, hasn't been discussed in 3 weeks since we sent it. Perjury NM memo will be another 30 pages. My friends, on the basis of all of that and more, we can say that the claim that there are no co-conspirators for Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is massively fake news. Take it away, Rami.
You want me to comment on that? Or
No, in the interest of time, we can do that at the end. You can deal with your first choice.
Okay. So my first choice was that Venezuela is flooding the United States with drugs, with fentanyl, or everything of this kind of sort. So the first thing is that Venezuela is not even mentioned as a country of origin for fentanyl smuggled into the United States in the DEA's 2025 National Drug Threat Assessment report. And then there's furthermore, there's some data showing that only 210 metric tons of cocaine passed through Venezuela in 2018 compared to 1,400 metric tons that went through Guatemala, showing that there are actually different routes used to smuggle cocaine directly from either from Colombia, Mexico, but Venezuela plays an extremely small role in this. And that's also when we take into account the fact that I believe in 1980s, the United States CIA had like an office in Venezuela that was found guilty of smuggling drugs into the United States from Venezuela. So even if there is a culture, let's just say, of manufacturing drugs and shipping them to the United States, actually it was the United States that were guilty of that. There's a post by Max Blumenthal about this where he reposted this New York Times article. That was kind of interesting. And then most importantly, that fake news was then used to be, it was supported by Trump just like 2 weeks ago. He declared fentanyl as a weapons of mass destruction, saying, I hereby designate illicit fentanyl and its core precursor chemicals as weapons of mass destruction. We're blaming Venezuela for an infiltration of fentanyl into the United States, but also China being this hub for manufacturing the precursors of fentanyl that is then shipped to Mexico. So in some way, Trump is saying Venezuela has weapons of mass destruction and China as well. So we could all see where this is going. Then the Secretary of War, in consultation with the Secretary of Homeland Security, shall update all directives regarding the armed forces. That's part of the designation of fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. Shall update all directives regarding the armed forces' response to chemical incidents in the homeland to include the threat of illicit fentanyl. So basically, the U.S. Armed Forces has been given carte blanche to target anywhere around the world where weapons of mass destruction can be used to harm U.S. civilians or U.S. armed forces. And why do the United States need to declare fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction? Well, because that allows the president to bypass Congress to declare war against the country. So today it starts with Venezuela, because Venezuela historically has always been a hub critical of the United States. They're not part of the Monroe vision of the Western Hemisphere as being loyal vassal states of the United States. Also, Venezuela has this huge oil reserve, the largest proven reserve of oil in the entire world. And also, I think it's also important to mention that Purdue Pharma is I think it was even a publicly traded company that was for the United States that spearheaded truly this opioid crisis in the United States. And I just have this tiny little graph over here showing that the smuggling of drugs into the United States is disproportionately done by United States citizens, and then drastically less by Mexican nationals, and a number that you could barely even recognize by other nationalities. So in my opinion, Dimitri, this is not even fake news. This is intentional disinformation meant to manufacture consent war against Venezuela. And then once we're done with Venezuela, I think no other country in the Western Hemisphere is going to be safe from this, because Mexico can be. I mean, there's evidence showing that there's drugs being smuggled from the southern border into the United States, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, God knows. So this is more of a doctrine and what we could envision over the next few years, how America will be bullying countries in the Western Hemisphere through this false pretext of drugs. So for me, Dimitri, I'm convinced this is the #1 biggest fake news of the year.
It's
Your
definitely fake news, or like you said, it's arguably even worse than fake news. And to repeat again, the bogus claim is Venezuela is flooding the U.S. with drugs. Now, the third fake news story we've identified for you, there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. That was one of my choices. In November of last year, Israel and Lebanon entered into a ceasefire agreement. Since then, Israel has violated the agreement on a near daily basis by bombing Lebanon relentlessly. despite thousands of Israeli attacks on Lebanon since November 27, 2024. So 13 months ago, this thing went into effect. Western media have claimed and continue to claim that the ceasefire is holding, although it acknowledges that the ceasefire is fragile. So here you can see one of countless examples. This is an article from March of this year. Fragile Lebanon ceasefire holds for now. When the corporate media say that a ceasefire involving Israel is holding but fragile, what they really mean is that Israel is relentlessly violating the ceasefire, but that its adversary is respecting the ceasefire. And it claims that the ceasefire has been violated or has broken down altogether only if the adversary of Israel shoots back in retaliation for Israel's ceasefire violations. Other than absent, a meaningful response to Israel's violations and provocations, they'll say that it's holding but fragile. Now, 1 year after the Lebanon ceasefire took effect, Lebanese officials say that the Israelis have committed more than 10,000, I repeat, more than 10,000 breaches, ranging from air incursions to artillery fire, ground infiltrations, assassinations, and the continued occupation of Lebanese territory. And in fact, Israel violated the ceasefire again today. And let us show you here a report published today on Resistance Media. And you can see there the aftermath of a drone strike on a vehicle between the towns of Al-Jumayja and Majd al-Salem in southern Lebanon. That brought the number of martyrs in Lebanon to today, just today, to 3. Therefore, we declare that the claim that there is a ceasefire in Lebanon is fake news. Rami, take it away.
So my next claim, similar to yours, but quite bolder, is that Trump stopped 8 wars in 10 months. And then I went through this list of the 10 wars that he stopped. The first one is Armenia, Azerbaijan. Well, first of all, there was a relatively like a ceasefire, let's just say, over the last, I think it was back in a year ago or two. And that was caused by the withdrawal of the Armenians from the ethnic Armenians from Artsakh, which was a republic on this territory geographically called as Nagorno-Karabakh. But I mean, the war was not over. It's a ethnic cleansing, the removing of every ethnic Armenian from this territory. And Azerbaijan is still pushing forward for a bigger war by claiming territories that are currently in Armenia as being Azeri land. And Azerbaijan has been just recently falsely accusing Armenia of increasing its military spending and its number of military reservists. But what Azerbaijan does not recognize is that it's spending twice the amount that Armenia is on weapons, and it has twice the military reserves. And then beyond this, I don't even know if it's worth getting into this one. Israel and Iran hostilities. He's saying that he put an end to the war between Iran and Israel. Well, first of all, this was also a war against the United States. The United States did not achieve any of their ambitions or their objectives throughout this war. Eyal Zamir just 5 days ago threatened Iran by saying that it reserves the right to keep attacking its enemies wherever. Now, who is Eyal Zamir referring to, since he's already attacking Lebanon continuously, day in, day out, as you've mentioned just recently? It really leaves the door open to no one else than Iran. Thailand and Cambodia. This is the most absurd one. On Thursday, just today, Thai fighters jets dropped dozens of bombs near the northwestern Cambodian village of Chukche early on Friday morning, causing extensive destruction of civilian homes, properties, and public infrastructure. I mean, I think this is quite obvious that the Thailand and Cambodia war is not over. India, Pakistan, the status of the Indus Water Treaty is not resolved. India suspended it. Pakistan considers that any changes to the regular flow of the water to be an act of war, an act of aggression against Pakistan, and that Pakistan reserves the right to forcefully attack any of these infrastructure that would be causing any inconveniences to Pakistan. And then there's this, he mentions the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. The situation there is still drastic as we speak. I mean, Rwanda apparently has been talking about doing a pullback, but it's most likely going to be a different kind of war where Rwanda is going to be supporting specific militias in Congo. And then Serbia and Kosovo, this is like a dormant conflict that has, there has been like hidden tensions, but direct confrontations, I think we haven't seen that in over 2 years. I believe there were some of these Serbs that were able to fight back Kosovo. And this is all being caused because Kosovo, which is not a country recognized by Serbia, Serbia considers as being part of Kosovo being part of Serbia. The de facto government of Kosovo has been forcing Serbs to use Kosovar identity cards, while the Serbs refuse to do so. And every now and then, Kosovo is using that specific policy of enforcing ID cards on the Serbs as a way to hide intentions. And now the question would be, why would this be the case? Well, we know historically NATO has always had big issues with Serbia. It's a country that is allied with Russia. It was historically the heart of Yugoslavia, one of the strongest countries of Europe back in that time. And now Serbia has been condemning Turkey for continuing to ship massive amounts of weapons to Kosovo. So whether there is a war going on right now in Kosovo or not, that's not the story. The issue is, are the tensions still going on, and will there be war shortly? That depends on where the United States want to spark another war, if they want it to be in India, in Pakistan, in Kosovo, in Palestine, wherever it is. But it's safe to say that these conflicts are still alive and strong. Egypt and Ethiopia, that was not really a conflict. He took claim for putting an end to that war. It was not a war. It's like these border disputes, I think, related to this flow of water entering Egypt. So I think Trump is full of shit for multiple reasons, but that's also one of them. Him claiming that he stopped 8 wars in 10 months. I mean, he claimed
fake news story number 4. It's fake.
He claimed to put an end to the war in Russia and Ukraine. That within months of getting into power, I think we're still waiting. And every Russian I speak to says this is never going to happen under the conditions that the United States are bringing forward.
Right. Now, before I turn to fake news story number 5, I just want to tell people that there was somebody in the chat who was expressing strong objections to the report we published today about the Uyghurs. I actually was going to leave all of his comments in there, but then he started using some just ad hominem foul language, and that we're not going to tolerate. If you want to criticize our reporting, we're not. That in and of itself is not a reason for us to delete your comment. We welcome your feedback, but if you're just going to start saying, insulting things about us, then we're really not interested. Constructive criticism, we more than welcome it. Now, 5th story, which we say is fake, and that is that Donald Trump put forward a 28-point plan designed to bring about peace in Ukraine. We've covered this extensively, and this story emerged, I believe it was in mid-November, when Axios, which has kind of become the go-to media organization for stories, fake stories that the political elite wants to plant in the press, they quoted unnamed sources, the ever-present unnamed sources, that Donald Trump had put together this plan, and it was well advanced, and he'd been talking to the Russians, and it consisted of 28 points. And the moment I saw this, because I came to the conclusion months ago that Donald Trump, this is all just a fraud. This is all kabuki theater. Donald Trump doesn't want to end the war in Ukraine. His administration wants to continue the war in Ukraine. Maybe it wants a ceasefire temporarily so that Ukraine can rearm, mobilize more soldiers, rebuild its fortifications, stop the Russian advances all over the front line. But ending the war, no. That is not in the DNA of the U.S. government, not at this stage. So when this story came out in mid-November, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not even going to pay attention to it. But eventually, because there was so much chatter about this peace plan and whether there finally was a meaningful discussion taking place that was going to bring the war to an end, I looked at the plan and right away knew that it was never going to fly. And I'll just tell you 2 or 3 reasons why. Number one, it didn't call for Russia to be given sovereignty over all 4 oblasts that it has incorporated under its constitution into the Russian Federation, namely Kherson, Zaporozhye, Luhansk, and Donetsk. It only called for Russia to have sovereignty, I think, over one of them, Donetsk plus Crimea. The Russians have been very clear they're not going to accept anything less than all of these territories. And they've been saying that, in fact, if this continues, we're going to take more land. And they are, in fact, in control of land outside of those areas. They're in control of land in Sumy region, and they're advancing in Sumy region in the north. They're in control of land in the Kharkov region, and they're advancing there too. And they've got forces on the ground in the Dnipro region. So this is just going to get worse. They don't seem to have gotten the memo yet in the West that it's just going to get worse for the Ukrainian people. And that's why this thing was doomed to fail. They were not ready to say to the Russians, okay, you can have those oblasts. And you may say that's wrong, it's immoral, it's a violation of international law, but the reality is that they can't stop Russia's advances, whether through economic sanctions or military action, unless they're going to draw us into a nuclear war. That being the case, if you really care about the Ukrainian people, you would say, cut your losses, don't lose more territory, stop the killing, stop the destruction of infrastructure, and minimize the damage to Ukraine. But that's not what the West wants to do. So the other reason that was one reason why this thing was never going to fly. Another reason it was never going to fly was the plan called for hundreds of billions of dollars of Russian central bank assets to be basically either transferred to Ukraine or used for some ambiguous purposes by a peace board that would be led by Donald Trump. That was a complete non-starter. That wasn't going to go anywhere. And they also talked about treating, they said, we're not going to put Ukraine in NATO. This is what the 28-point plan said. But we are going to give Ukraine security guarantees under which the NATO powers will regard any attack on Ukraine as being an attack on the members of NATO, which is an Article 5 guarantee under the NATO treaty. So it was just a sort of stupid way of trying to pull the wool over the Russians' eyes and saying, oh, they won't be in NATO, but in fact, we're going to give them the same protections as if they were in NATO. Again, something the Russians were never going to accept. And then it got even worse because after they put forward this plan, it became apparent that this actually wasn't an offer they were making to the Russians. The Americans, what they were doing was putting a plan to be considered by Zelensky, who has said consistently he's not making any concessions. And this meant that the plan was going to get watered down even more. And this was being done. Ukraine was being given by Washington the opportunity to water this unacceptable plan down even more, even though Washington has complete control over Ukraine. This idea that they can't force Ukraine to do a deal, that Washington can't do that, is ludicrous. So for all of those reasons and more, we say that the claim that Donald Trump put forward a peace plan to end the Ukraine war is fake. Rami, take it away.
I mean, even more fake than that. It's the claim that Russia is planning to invade Europe, to invade NATO. This is one of these claims over here. This is General Mandon's speech at this regroupment of mayors in France. I was in Paris during that time. If I would have known, I would have attended. He says, if our country falters because it's not ready to accept losing its children. I mean, basically calling for people to go die for some war. I don't think he's referring specifically to one there, but it's quite telling that it's quite obvious that he's referring that French people should die in Ukraine fighting Russia because that's the next war is going to be on French soil. And then you have Macron himself, who says, Mark Rutte, of the Secretary General of NATO, who says Russia could be ready to use military force against NATO within 5 years. EU Defense Commissioner says if we do nothing, military attacks could soon follow these hybrid attacks. These hybrid attacks, I believe they're referring to like these cyber warfare going on. German Foreign Minister says our intelligence services indicate Moscow is creating the option of a war against NATO by 2029 at the latest. Well, first of all, it's quite obvious what Russia wants in this war in Ukraine. and it's to end NATO expansion, because NATO is a threat. If Russia wasn't scared of NATO, well, if Russia had no, if it wasn't about NATO expansion, then Russia would have already went to war against NATO. So I think it's more about making sure that the borders with Russia are not being weaponized, being used as a launching pad to launch war against Russia. Then we need to look into the response by the Russian authorities. We have here the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister says Russia is ready to legally confirm that it has no intention of attacking the European Union or the NATO military alliance. We have Putin, who said we have never intended to, but if they wanted to hear in writing, fine. And now we have to ask ourselves, what's the intention behind these provocative statements that Russia is going to attack Europe? Well, it could be because I know we're not taking these negotiations too seriously between Russia and the United States, but from a strategic standpoint, Europe wants to push back Russia, and by doing so, it's in their best interest to make sure that these peace talks don't amount to anything. So it could be a way to to hide intentions to derail these peace talks. And then another reason why this might be happening is to maybe test Russian military readiness. So depending on the response to these provocative statements from Russia, these European provocative statements, Europe is probably trying to evaluate how Russia would respond. And that maybe would show if Russia is able to keep fighting for longer in Ukraine, if Russia is looking to actually put an end to this conflict. It could be used to see what kind of cards Russia has and what cards Europe has. But the reality is, Europe has no cards. The territory in Ukraine is already in the hands of Russia. Russia has been, the sanctions are barely impacting them. I think they've mentioned that their economy has outperformed projections and have offset all the impacts from the sanctions. Europe is not even able to seize Russian assets from these Belgian banks. So in reality, the best solution, I think, is, as you mentioned, Dimitri, negotiation along the lines that are acceptable, in a sense where Russia has already gave citizenship to everyone living in the territory of the 4 territories they've taken control of. It's absurd that Russia would ever cede these territories. I believe Ukraine might have more leverage negotiating where the line ends, where the front line stabilizes itself, because Russia is actually looking to get Donetsk, the entirety of Donetsk, the entirety of Luhansk, and asking Ukraine to withdraw from these territories. That's maybe where there could be a lot more negotiations. But to ask for Russia to retreat from lands that they've taken at a heavy price is absurd. And I believe that in the same context of Palestine, I believe that anyone living on this territory must be given equal rights to everyone, to their peers, in a sense where Russia has been giving Russian citizenship to the people of this territory, something Israel would never do. So, this is absurd. My statement is Russia is not, the claim that Europe is claiming that Russia is going to invade Europe is absurd.
Fake news. We say it's fake news. Next fake news story. We're now on number 7 out of the 10 we've chosen for your listening pleasure today. And number 7 is there's a ceasefire in Gaza. As in the case of the Lebanon ceasefire, Israel has violated the Gaza ceasefire on a near daily basis ever since it came into effect on October 11th of this year. And despite these violations, typically, again, the Western corporate media claim that the Gaza ceasefire is holding, but is fragile. And here you can see an October 14th report from PBS, the state broadcaster in the United States. As fragile Gaza ceasefire holds, Israelis lament incomplete return of dead hostages. And then the first paragraph, they refer to the ceasefire as tenuous, but say it was holding. Now, again, when the corporate media in the West say that a ceasefire involving Israel is holding but fragile, what they really mean is that Israel is violating the ceasefire 6 ways from Sunday, but that Israel's adversary is withholding its fire, is not firing back. And they will make this claim as long as the adversary doesn't fire back, no matter how relentlessly, blatantly, severely Israel violates the ceasefire. Yesterday, Christmas Day, the Palestinian resistance in Gaza issued a tally of Israel's carnage during the so-called ceasefire. And we're going to put that up on the screen for you. One moment, please. And you'll see there on the Resistance News Network, 930 violations by the occupation during 76 days of ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, with an average of 12 violations of the agreement per day. The violations resulted in 414 martyrs, 1,133 wounded, 45 arrests, and the violations consisted of 279 shooting incidents, 50 vehicle incursions, 438 shellings and targetings, and 158 house demolitions. The figure of 414 Palestinians killed since October 11th, that works out to an average of nearly 6 Palestinians killed per day. And during that same period, Israel, according to the figures published today, wounded 1,133. That comes out to an average of 15 Palestinians wounded per day, on top of the 6 or so who are being killed. Therefore, we declare without hesitation that the claim that the Gaza ceasefire is holding is fake news. Your turn, Rami.
Definitely fake. My claim over here is the following. It is that, there is democracy in Syria. So the revolution occurred around a year ago, and it was praised by Europe, by Germany, by all these quote unquote highly developed democracies of the world. But it couldn't be anything further from the truth. First of all, in many parts of the country, especially Kurdish-controlled northeast and minority regions, elections either did not take place or were postponed, leaving seats empty and people excluded from voting. So, to a certain extent, only territories that are loyal or that are under control of Ahmed al-Shara participated in these elections. Keep in mind that the Kurdish territory is maybe a quarter of Syria, so that's a large part of the country. Religious minorities were drastically underrepresented as the candidates for these elections compared to the makeup of Syria, which is a huge step back in the democratic nature of the country compared to before, where minorities were protected. Elections were conducted through indirect electoral colleges that selected representatives, and the interim president actually appointed 1/3 of the parliament. So 1/3 of the people represented in parliament are just random people that the president, self-proclaimed president, Ahmed al-Shara al-Jolani, appointed on his own. So we could say that's 2/3 of democracy, but definitely not an entire democracy, considering 1/3 of it is randomly appointed by this former al-Nusra guy, or current al-Nusra guy. Candidacy, well, there were certain requirements. Have not been a supporter of the former regime and terrorist organizations in any way. Keep in mind that the president himself was part of a terrorist organization, and the former regime, which was the government of Syria, which anyone who wanted to participate in the political and nature and who didn't want to be part of a civil war is immediately excluded from the democratic process, meaning that there's no one from Ba'ath Syria was eligible for the elections, which is, absurd considering that there is support for Ba'athist policies in Syria. And don't forget that terrorist organizations, well, the president himself is a terrorist, and the people he appointed were terrorists as well, have not been affiliated with armed forces or security services. Syria had conscription. So that means that people who were conscripted into the army were not eligible to run for the elections. So in some way, the elections were shaped around a way that benefits the al-Nusra guys who took over the country. And then finally, have not been a minister, governor, or deputy, or assistant. And then it makes you ask yourself, why can't these people that were invested into the Syrian Arab Republic prior to the revolution not allowed to be part of the elections? Could it be that if they win the elections, if they gathered support and a drastic amount of votes in the elections, it would mean that the Syrian revolution was not as successful as it should have been, and that it didn't gather as much support? So this election was a total sham. 1/3 of the votes appointed by Ahmed al-Shara the candidates had to be in some way loyal to him to be able to successfully run, and it was not even held on the entirety of the Syrian territory. Syria is under dictatorship, and there's no democracy happening there. It's a sham. It's
You
fake
heard
news.
it, folks. Fake news. Syria's democracy is fake news. Our next story, let's move on to story number 8. Is this 9? I think this might be 9.
It's 9.
So the fake story, this is my last of the 5 selections allotted to me. The claim that U.S. and Israel obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment program. Let me tell you why we say this is fake news. So since the U.S. and Israel desperately sought a way out of the 12-day war with Iran in June of this year, Trump has claimed repeatedly that the U.S. and Israel obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. And here you have a statement on June 25th. Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated, and suggestions otherwise are fake news, not the claim that it's been obliterated. And the Donald goes on to say the world is far safer after my highly successful, decisive precision strikes against the Iranian regime's key nuclear facilities. And Trump is quoted as saying, quote, monumental damage was done to all nuclear sites in Iran as shown by satellite images. Obliteration is an accurate term. The white structure shown is deeply embedded into the rock with even its roof well below ground level and completely shielded from flame. The biggest damage took place far below ground level, bullseye, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to give you all the technical analysis because I don't need to. I'm going to rely on Ted Postal, who days after, a couple of weeks after the 12-day war was suspended, he gave a very illuminating technical presentation on the deep dive with Daniel Davis. For those of you who don't know, Theodore Postal is a professor emeritus of science, technology, and international security at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the world's leading technological institutes. And he is, if not the leading weapons expert in the United States, certainly one of them. And after explaining in some detail, I watched this whole program. He had a very digestible, for persons like myself who don't have weapons expertise, very digestible PowerPoint presentation. He went through it step by step by step with retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis asking him questions along the way. And at the end of it, he said there is no credible evidence, this was his opinion, that Iran's nuclear program was obliterated. In fact, and as he explained, it would be easy after the attack for Iran to hide and preserve its entire stockpile of enriched uranium. It could have done that before the attack, just in the days leading up to it. And you could have taken away all of this enriched uranium, which is more than enough material to make numerous bombs, in the back of a pickup truck, he said. Like literally, you could have taken it away in the back of a pickup truck. And even worse, as he explained, because the attacks had caused Iran to end IAEA inspections, they were willing to have IAEA inspections, even though they didn't trust the IAEA before the criminal war of aggression. Afterwards, they said, that's it, we're cutting them off. So they caused, Israel and the United States caused the West, the whole world, to lose this conduit of important information about Iran's nuclear program by violating in Iran's sovereignty and killing hundreds of civilians and doing something which is a crime under international law, violating, bombing nuclear facilities, which have, for obvious reasons, specially protected status. So Ted Postal went on to say in this lengthy and informative interview that it was possible that Iran already had a bomb. This is 2 weeks after the so-called obliteration of its nuclear facilities, and that it could put one together in a matter of days, relatively inexpensively, and people in the West would have no way of knowing this. And here's some of what Professor Postal had to say at the end of his detailed technical presentation on the deep dive with Daniel Davis. I think we're both trying to put it up on the screen. There you go.
It's not playing, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's not playing. That's weird. Let's try this again. Maybe you should take it out and put it in.
Yeah, let me try again. Video file.
Them correctly, then it doesn't matter. So you would not even need to test a bomb.
Well, that's a little bit concerning because the hope has kind of been that would be an alert to something that happened. But now you're saying it's completely legitimate and valid that they may say they have one, and we wouldn't have any way to know whether they did or didn't.
No,
we would have to assume they did.
We would not know.
And so if I can sum
We
up,
would only know if we knew that the 408 kilograms of 60% uranium was still under oversight, but we no longer have that data.
So the bottom line to all this is that as of right now, as we're speaking here, if
We're
Iran,
worse off than we were.
it is worse than it was before. So Iran, in their secret chambers, whatever, they can decide, all right, we're going to do that tomorrow morning, and no one would know anything about it because we don't have any eyes or ears on the ground until a declaration was made or a bomb shows up. Is that accurate?
Right.
So when he said Iran could do that, what he's talking about is build a bomb, a nuke. Iran has the capacity to do it. They could do it in a matter of days, and we wouldn't know anything about it. So this story is so damn fake that, in fact, the situation is worse, not better, worse than it was before they launched this criminal war of aggression on Iran. When I say the situation, I'm talking about the security situation. Global security, international security. We are less safe as a result of this criminal war of aggression. So those were my 5 options, and you have one left to go, Rami. Take it away.
Yeah, my last one is that the United States was able to severely impact and dent the Chinese economy during the trade war. And that's totally false. First of all, the U.S. tariffs are not making China suffer. They're making Americans suffer. It raised prices for Americans. It failed to bring back manufacturing, didn't meaningfully weaken China, and China used its state power to cushion the impact through its central banking platforms, its control of the banks, insurance companies. So there was like a very quick short-term impact, but that was able to be mitigated quite quickly by China. It encouraged supply chain fragmentation. It also destroyed America's reputation as being a reliable partner for trade. And all while throwing sanctions on China, the United States was throwing sanctions on Canada, Mexico, Latin America, Europe, pretty much everyone. So in reality, I think that doesn't create confidence for investors to invest in the United States or to even keep trading with the United States. It actually encouraged countries, and Canada, I think Carney is one of them, who encouraged Canada to find trading partners across Europe. So now trade is less centralized within the United States and a lot more decentralized across trading partners all over the world. And it accelerated geopolitical decoupling. Countries like Russia and China know that their ability to access Western markets is conditional. It's not permanent. It's dependent on being docile countries that cannot outshine the master. Russia and China are ready to decouple. They're ready to develop their own framework of economic prosperity that includes the global South. We're witnessing these revolutions and allies that are all finding support from China. So for me, the fact that America was able to put a dent into China during this trade war, that dent was thrown back at them, and the United States economy is fragile, weak, and there's not much left there. So at the bottom of the screen, I've put the number affiliated with all of our claims. Feel free to type into the chat a number that you feel is the biggest fake news of the year, and then just type them into the chat. We'll keep an eye on those, and the number that we see recurring the most, we'll declare it as the winner. Dimitri, what is your thoughts over here on our 10 fake news that we've listed?
Well, let's just provide a quick resume of what we identified as the top 10 biggest fake news stories of 2025. Quickly, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had no co-conspirators. 2, Venezuela is flooding the U.S. with drugs. 3, there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. 4, Trump ended 8 wars in 10 months. 5, Trump put forward a 28-point peace plan designed to end the Ukraine war. 6, Russia plans to invade the European Union. 7, there's a ceasefire in Gaza. 8, Syria is now a democracy. 9, the US and Israel obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment program. And last but not least, the US is winning the tariff war with China. Now, if any of you out there thinks that there's some really big fake news story that should have been in the top 10 that we missed, we're more than interested in hearing from you. There has been no shortage of stories of this nature during the course of this year. It seems the media is becoming increasingly, the corporate media, desperate with each passing year to, pull the wool over our eyes. And by the way, when we say the biggest fake news story, I guess what we mean by biggest is the most important ones, the ones that have the biggest impact on the most people. So with that, how are the numbers shaping up there, Rami? Do you have a kind of preliminary count?
Our audience,
all 10 are.
Yeah, all 10. It looks like it's going to be hard to decide. We got someone who said 7, which one was 7 again?
Come back, I'll tell you right now. 7 is there is a ceasefire in Gaza.
And then we have 6, I believe there's, which one was 6 again? Maybe Venezuela?
6, Russia plans to invade the European Union.
6, and then 1, which is Maxwell and Epstein had no conspirators.
Right.
We have 8, which is, oh God, I should have typed them down. I have it here. 8, Syria is a democracy.
Yes, 128. Someone tell Kash Patel it's all credible information. Man, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I would believe a victim of Epstein over any one of these powerful scumbags in a heartbeat. And so, I mean, the only way I think you can say that their story isn't credible is if you have hard evidence. I mean, just credible. We're not talking here about, necessarily the whole story, but just something that's credible, that meets the minimum threshold of credibility. The only way I think you could say that is if you have hard information which flatly contradicts what they're saying. So, for example, if they say that I was abused by this person in this place at that time, and that person can prove that they were somewhere else, which wouldn't be a difficult thing for a wealthy person to do. I wasn't even in the country at that time, or I was in another city, and here I've got the goods, I've got the receipts, I can show you this, I've got photographs. That kind of thing sure would, fatally undermine the credibility of an allegation. But, short of something like that, how can you say, given the people you're dealing with here, that they're not even credible? I mean, at least Kash Patel should be providing some explanation for why they came to that conclusion, that they discounted the claims of a victim of Epstein, that they were abused by somebody other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Someone had a good one, by the way. A fake news would be that there's no inflation, that everything's back to normal. That was that's pretty much a good one.
That's an important one.
So it looks like there's the 3 most popular ones are Epstein had no conspirators, ceasefire in Gaza, and Venezuela is a narco-trafficking state.
Right. Or we could, maybe the 3 most unpopular is the more accurate way to put it. In any case, thank you everybody for your weighing in. If there are any questions, I think we have some time to take a few questions. I do want to comment while anybody, people are out there who might want to ask a question, putting it in the chat on some of the commentary I've been seeing about, Rami's report from Xinjiang, which we published this morning. Again, we aren't, some of the commenters may have missed the opening commentary on this live stream. So just to repeat, we aren't taking a definitive position on whether or not China is brutally oppressing the Uyghurs and, to the point of committing genocide. We don't claim to have done a sufficiently thorough investigation to come to any kind of a definitive conclusion on that. What we do say is that the onus, as Rami explained eloquently at the outset, what the onus, when you're accusing somebody of something like this, the crime of crimes, the onus lies upon the accuser to prove it. It's not up to China to prove its innocence. And I would never say, for example, it's up to Israel to prove its innocence. I say Israel's committing genocide because there's a damn mountain of evidence that it's committing genocide, which we've talked about at great length here. You know, I don't ever claim that the accused has an obligation to prove their own innocence. So with that as background, we say there are holes in the narrative, and what Rami saw in one small part of Xinjiang, namely the capital Urumqi, was not consistent with the claim of brutal oppression and genocide. But that's just one small part of Xinjiang, and Rami was only there for a brief period of time. So it would be, you know, unreasonable of us to say that we have some kind of definitive conclusion to offer you. We don't. Rami's report is useful information which should be added to the mix of all the information out there about what is happening. And we should all weigh up that information by remembering that two things, that the people who are making this accusation overwhelmingly are Western neocons who have zero interest in the rights of Muslims, as has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. And secondly, they have a long and sordid record of lying. Many of the authorities who are making these allegations. That doesn't mean that it's untrue necessarily, but we do approach these claims with a healthy dose of skepticism. So that's our position. Rami, anything you want to add about your Xinjiang report?
I fell in love with China visiting there. I'll be back. And if there's anything I forgot, and if there's, believe me, Dimitri, like, man, we're trying to go to Venezuela. We're truly scared of nothing at all. We were at 20 meters away from the border with Palestine, with drones flying over us. We were at the funeral of Sayyid Hassan. If there's anywhere you're convinced that I'll find the evidence that there's a genocide there, please message us, and I'll be the first one there. And I mean, I'm not scared. Truly, I'm not scared of anything. I'll be there. So if there's any specific coordinates, any specific location, anything in particular that I could see with my own eyes, what you're convinced is brutal oppression, genocide, well, I'll go there. And I'll find a way to go there. So yeah, feel free to share any information you have. I show you what I was able to see. I went where I felt inspired, where I saw like some movements. I actually did go to the countryside. I went around 45 minutes away to some of these mountains there are actually significant for like Buddhism. And I had some friends that were able to take me there. There's actually no checkpoints leaving the highways. I mean, it doesn't mean that there's none, but clearly I'll need a bit more help to find any claims that you guys have. So please feel free to tell me to give me some coordinates. So there's a couple of questions here. The first one that I was able to get was right here. Dimitri, do you know anything about the new Freedom Canal?
I don't. The Freedom Canal, is this the canal that is being suggested for by Israel, or is this in Latin America?
I have no idea. I tried to look online. I didn't find much information. I have no idea.
Judging from the name, it's probably an American idea. I must confess about this. I'm very curious about what this is.
I think it's this canal going from the Red Sea that cuts slightly into Gaza and then gets into the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay, I understood that was going to be called the Ben Gurion Canal. But if that is what our friend is referring to, the Ben Gurion Canal, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's entirely possible that Israel wants it to happen, is planning for it to happen. But they are a long way away from having secured the territory necessary to construct that canal. And the other thing, just from an economic perspective, I wonder about the business case for this canal, because the Suez Canal isn't going anywhere. And that canal would have to compete with the Suez Canal. And, with Europe being deindustrialized, And I'm sorry to say, by all indications, declining economically. I don't think there's much reason to believe that in the years ahead, the decades ahead, there is going to be massive increases in maritime transport through the Red Sea. But there's going to be competition, whether or not there is, from the Suez Canal. So the whole business case for this strikes me. I mean, this would cost many billions of dollars to build. It would take a long time to build it. It would be hotly disputed, its legality, for decades to come. Just as a business proposition, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But I don't think, practically speaking, the Israelis will ever be able to achieve this.
So there's just a comment here I wanted to address. It's someone said, "No, you won't. Your focus is all about Israel." Well, the last reports we published, this one today was related to Xinjiang. The one
what is no, you won't? What
I believe it was because I was referring to I'll go investigating Xinjiang, what's going on there, if you give me coordinates.
Right.
Well, first of all, our report today was related to Xinjiang. Our report 2 days ago was related to the U.S. invasion of Panama. We're trying very hard to get into Venezuela. We're against all forms of imperialism, neocons, any types of wars, and that's why we're extremely wary, right? Because we don't like it when claims are being used to justify for more wars. We don't want any of that. So our focus is, of course, it was about, Palestine, not Israel. Israel does not exist. It was about Palestine because there was a genocide happening there and it's still going on, and that it got us all involved. All of the West, it dragged Iran into this war, and it severely impacted us. And I believe it's time to put all our eyes on an ongoing genocide. But that doesn't stop us from entertaining what's going on in Panama, in Venezuela, in China, and all over the world. So that's fake news.
Again, we're not saying, someone just in the chat again said alleged that we're saying there isn't a genocide. Again, we have not taken that position. We're telling you what Rami saw in one small part of Xinjiang, and nobody at Reason to Resist claims to have done an exhaustive investigation on this. So we hope that people understand the scope and nature of the report that Rami put out today, and just watch it. I mean, it can't hurt to watch it. All these, just the fact, I've personally found it fascinating just to watch Rami roaming through the streets of Urumqi, which looked to me like a very clean, orderly city. It looked, reasonably prosperous, and just that in and of itself was really an eye opener for me. And is quite inconsistent with everything I've heard in the Western corporate media about the place. But again, that doesn't mean we've got it all figured out.
And we're going to publish a follow-up report, which I spoke to Uyghur people. I actually filmed little kids skateboarding in front of the headquarters of the Communist Party. This is supposed to be a severe police state where the slightest Western action gets you thrown into a gulag, according to all these claims. I show you what I filmed, what I saw with my own eyes. Maybe there was a big conspiracy. They knew I was here recording for a small little YouTube channel, and they changed everything for us to make sure that we don't report back bad things in the West. But if they did, kudos to them, because that's a huge undertaking. Dimitri, what are your thoughts on Nigeria?
My thoughts on Nigeria, God, we've got some Zionist trolls today, big time Zionist trolls. Anyways, I just, scoff and in disbelief whenever I hear that the Americans are bombing ISIS somewhere. When I traveled across West Asia, I suspect, Rami, you had a similar experience when you were there. The overwhelming perspective I heard from, Arab brothers and sisters, whether in Lebanon or Jordan or Iraq or Palestine, is that ISIS is a creation of Western intelligence agencies. And there's some reason to believe that that's true. I mean, after all, look who is in charge of Syria today. Is somebody who was a leader in this terrorist organization is now being feted in halls of power, was even greeted in the White House after having a $10 million bounty on his head. So I don't believe for one second that the reason why the U.S. is bombing Nigeria is because it's targeting ISIS bases. Furthermore, why does it need to do that? Nigeria is pretty much, its president is pretty much a vassal of Washington, and it has a sizable military. So why does the Americans need to be bombing ISIS bases there? Why don't the Nigerian military take this on? I would attach zero importance to this whatsoever. I don't know exactly what is going on. Why is, the United States bombing Nigeria? It could be simply as a distraction from the deep, deep trouble in which Donald Trump finds himself. He claimed that there were whites. I think he said white people were being mass murdered in Nigeria or something like that. So maybe this is just a way for him to whip up and distract his base as all of this devastating evidence comes out about Donald Trump's relationship to the sexual predator and depraved lunatic Jeffrey Epstein, continuously enters the public domain. Do you have any thoughts about why they might be bombing Nigeria, Rami?
What I'm mostly concerned about is connecting the dots with Nigeria's intervention in Benin. So I don't know if there's like a quid pro quo, if this is welcomed by the president, who's definitely like a puppet of the United States there and of ECOWAS. I don't know, but also they bombed ISIS, who's in Nigeria, who's oppressing Christians on Christmas Day. I think that's also maybe a good way to let us know what's coming up. Are we going to see more U.S. involvement in Africa? We know that the United States' job is to keep U.S. control over the Western Hemisphere. Israel is supposed to keep control over Middle East and North Africa. France is supposed to keep control of the African continent and its former colonies, and they're not succeeding because of the revolutions in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, this attempt in Benin, and the revolution is truly increasing across that area of the world. So it could be that this will be an indicator of the United States and their intention to intervene in that part of the world.
Here's an interesting question for you from Kozanlar. What's your answer to that one, Rami? Maybe we'll just read it out for anybody who can't see it. I respect your filming, but have you seen any under 55-year-old man in any mosque? Could you enter any mosque after prayer time? Have you seen any single hijabi women? If the answer is no, please think about it. So this is about, obviously, Rami's report from Xinjiang, which we published today.
So respect your filming, but have you seen anyone under 55 years old in any mosques? I mean, I was under 55 years old. I still have 20 years to get there, and I was able to enter freely. So I don't think there's a restriction on that. No one came to see me, ask me for my age, and I think I'd stand out quite quickly if that was the case.
But I'd like to stop there, Rami. I think maybe, I don't know for sure, but Kozanlar can clarify if he wants to in the chat. I think what Kozanlar might be suggesting is that 55-year-old men have been rounded up. It's not that they're being prevented from entering the mosque, but that they're not out in the streets. They're not, they're not there because they're in
people under 55 are walking freely across the streets of Xinjiang, from what I've noticed. You see them working in shops. Actually, Dimitri, the next video I'm going to publish is me entering. I actually went to schools in Xinjiang. This is something I forgot because this was all 6 months ago. I did enter schools. I did see how the education system is being performed. I didn't film inside because I was actually with friends there. One of the guys that I met was a school after school kind of educator. He was teaching them how to draw, and there were people under 55 there. I interviewed like a group of kids skateboarding in front of at these like massive monuments in front of the Communist Party. So there are people under 55. Are there some at the mosque? We could look at the video clip. I didn't go there looking for something awful, right? I went there just noticing whatever I would notice.
Okay, so I'm sorry, he's clarified. What he's saying is that his understanding is that 55 men under 55 are prohibited from entering mosques. That's his understanding. So it'll be interesting. Please have a look at the footage. He was shot in the mosque. It'd be interesting to see if you see anybody who looks like a under 55-year-old man. But to the extent you can comment on this now, Rami, can you say anything about that? About what you've said?
I've been to many mosques throughout my life, and I didn't notice anything that stood out particularly when entering a mosque in Xinjiang. Actually, I'll tell you one thing. 1 year before going to Xinjiang, I was in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. I did all of the stands, and I'm infatuated by that part of the world. And the relation towards society and religion in Central Asia is not so different than what I saw in Xinjiang. What I mean by this is that even if there are restrictions on religion in Central Asia, and those are Central Asians applying policies to themselves. So I would just want to say that this is not necessarily foreign influence from China oppressing the Uyghurs. I mean, the Xinjiang Autonomous Region is governed by Uyghurs and Uyghurs and all the members, the ethnic diversity of people living there. So I have no problems going back with all of these great questions that you guys have. Could you enter any mosque after prayer time? So the one that I attended for Friday prayer, I just attended during Friday prayer. The other one, I went to one mosque outside of prayer times. That was the one in the Grand Bazaar. Again, I'm not the kind of person who goes to the mosques too often. So I did go for Friday prayer because that's a bit one of the essential ones. And I did go to the one at the Grand Bazaar outside of prayer times because I just happened to be there and it was not prayer time. Have you seen any single hijabi woman? I've seen a lot of hijabi women. But the particularity is that the way Central Asians wear the hijab is a bit different. And it's the same type of hijab that you see in Uzbekistan, in Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, where it's like a bit like of a cloth that goes from like the top of the head down. It doesn't really cover under it, but that's I believe like a cultural way of wearing the hijab that is specific to Central Asia. And you notice this in the Islamic world, that there are different ways of wearing the hijab from Turkey, from Western Africa, North Africa, the Middle East. So this is just my understanding of what I saw in Xinjiang.
Rami, you come from a Muslim background?
I am.
Yeah. So I think it's fair to say you're not practicing devout Muslim. You may or may not consider yourself Muslim, but I think it is relevant for people to know that you come from a Muslim background. If Rami were to see evidence of the oppression of Muslims, I can assure you he would not hesitate to say so.
I just want to reiterate that I've been to all of Central Asia except for Turkmenistan. Okay, at least like the post-Soviet Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. I've been to every single one of them, and truly, 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 I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I did not notice any different form of practicing Islam in Central Asia than I did in Xinjiang.
Okay. I don't see any other. Wait, we have a comment from Daria Creates, which I think is relevant to our discussion about these ads. I get a lot of fundraising ads on YouTube by mosques and for Palestinians. Can you investigate if and which they are legit? It's not orgs I have heard of, but that doesn't mean it's not legit. Interesting. I haven't seen those ads, but if I do, I'll definitely look into that further.
Also, Dimitri, one thing that we should talk about is Israel recognized Somaliland, and Somaliland recognizes Israel. Israel is the first country to recognize the entity of Somaliland.
Right. And we have a question from Anton Stamfel. Are either of you trying to get back to Palestine? As a matter of fact, Anton, I tried to enter the occupied West Bank in October. This was the 5th time that I tried to enter Palestine. It was the first time I was blocked. I had to go twice to the Allenby Bridge crossing. The first day I spent 5 hours there. And then they closed down the crossing at 5 p.m. I got there around noon, and they told me they hadn't had time to process my application. And if I wanted to go in, I'd have to come back. So I went back the next day. They made me wait 3 hours. And then a civilian, a man in civilian attire who was working for the border authority there, came out and told me that I would not be allowed to enter. And when I asked him why, he said because the Israeli security services had advised him that I was a security threat due to the fact that wherever I go, I criticize Israel. Those were his exact words. I actually recorded this surreptitiously. So I was barred from entering Palestine, and I would be very surprised if I'm going to get in anytime soon. I was very saddened by that, and frankly, it's an outrage because Israel has no right to control the borders of the West Bank. And I'm not the only person who has suffered this fate recently. A lot of people who were previously getting into Palestine are being blocked from doing so now.
So there's a couple more questions that I wanted to get into. So we have Koopa Koop, who says, Rami, I think it would be nice to have a debate with someone who claims there is Uyghur oppression. There's a couple of interesting debates online. It's not really debates, it's like honest conversations. Carl Zaw had one with someone from the World Uyghur Congress. And I just want to say that my initial reaction to the World Uyghur Congress is that when October 7 occurred, they stood behind Israel, and they also described themselves as wanting to build a state based on the same foundations of Israel, a Muslim state in Xinjiang, and they see Zionism as an inspiration. I cannot, these are just ideas I cannot respect, with all due respect. But I would be more than happy, not necessarily to debate, but just, I saw things with my own eyes. I filmed things with my camera. I'm happy to have an honest conversation with anyone. It could be recorded. It could be on my personal cell phone or anything of this sort. I want to learn more. I stand for peace and justice in the world for everyone. And then we have, what is ETIM? It's the East Turkestan Independence Movement. It's a terrorist organization that has done bombings in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, in Xinjiang. They actually killed an imam in Kashgar because he was supportive of building a united project with all peoples of Xinjiang under the great flag of the People's Republic of China. We spoke about Nigeria, and then there's this funny comment about you hating Jews for some reason, Dimitri, that I wanted to pin, see if you wanted to talk about this, but maybe it's not worth it. Is Rami wearing mascara?
He's come back again. Somebody named Frederick Alexander 5392. Wow. Why haven't I said anything negative about the Muslims? I have just in this very thing. I condemned the leader of Syria who identifies as a Muslim. I have said repeatedly that he's a head-chopping terrorist and a lackey of Washington. And I don't give anybody a free pass when they behave that way. I don't care what their religion is or isn't.
And Dimitri,
so I just want to say, dude, give it a rest, man. All these claims, you come after people and you say they hate Jews. No one's buying it anymore. The only people who believe this garbage, that because you condemn Israel's crimes, that means you hate the Jewish people. The only people who believe that are people who are so brainwashed, so lunatic, that even after 2 years of full-blown, audacious, in-your-face, showing you the middle finger genocide, they still believe Israel is the most moral, has the most moral army on earth. Those people, the ones who are that, propagandized, are the only ones who believe that critics of Israel hate Jews. So just give it a rest. No one buys it anymore. It's tiresome. And if you think you're going to, undermine my credibility by saying this shit about me, or if you think you're going to deter me from telling the truth about Israel, then you're smoking dope, dude. That's all I can say to you.
Also, this comment was posted while I was taking the piss on ETIM, the East Turkestan Independence Movement, which is a Muslim nationalist movement, Salafi. So we actually spent more time this stream, I believe, talking shit on these Muslim nationalist groups. So anyways, then we have this comment from Sambo who says, is Rami wearing mascara? Actually, I have very long, dark eyelashes. And
I've wanted to ask you that question for 10 years.
And in many parts of the world, again, I do not want to speculate too much over here, but in Xinjiang particularly, in Central Asia and here in Latin America, long eyelashes is a sign of beauty from what I understood. Okay? I'm not going to elaborate more on that.
No, sorry. I didn't mean to offend anybody who's smoking dope. By the way, I occasionally partake in the sensi, the art of sensi as well. So far be it from me to mock people who Smoke good dough. In any case, on that note,
One last question. Are you either of you planning to visit Sudan? I'm planning on visiting Sudan after Latin America.
we look forward to that. But, we should go there together, Rami. We should absolutely go there together. In any case, everybody, we've been going for almost now on 1 hour and 45 minutes. We greatly appreciate you joining us today, and we do wish you a most wonderful holiday and a peaceful and prosperous 2026. I think we're going to aim to have one more live stream before the end of the year, and if we do, we'll let you know as soon as possible. And if you're not already a subscriber to Reason to Resist, we warmly encourage you to become one. We broke through the 115,000 subscriber barrier this week, and are now moving towards 120,000. And you can help us to reach a broader audience with our unapologetic resistance journalism. Thank you so much for all of your support and your engagement. Rami, any last words?
Hasta luego, as we say here in Colombia.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye.